They laughed at the poor boy they ignored. But the day he walked into their office as their new boss, nobody could meet his eyes. Daniel, the quiet cleaner's son who used to stand outside their glass doors, begging for a chance, had once been invisible to them, pushed aside, talked down to, treated like he didn't belong. But now he sat in the very chair they once guarded so fiercely. How did the poor boy they ignored rise so high? What did he see, hear, and endure while they looked away? And why does it feel like he hasn't forgotten anything? Or anyone? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment where you are watching from. It gives me the strength and encouragement to keep writing beautiful stories. Daniel stood outside the towering building, clutching a worn-out file so tightly his fingers trembled. The security guards barely spared him a glance. To them, he was just another poor boy, dust on their polished floors, invisible in a world that moved too fast for people like him. Inside, air conditioners hummed softly, suits brushed past each other, and the scent of expensive perfume lingered in the air. But outside, under the harsh Lagos sun, Daniel swallowed hard. This was the third time he had come here that week. "Who are you looking for?" one guard finally asked, his tone bored, eyes already drifting away. I submitted my CV last week. I was told to come back today," Daniel replied, his voice low but steady. The guard scoffed. "Everybody submits CV, doesn't mean you'll be called. Move aside, don't block the entrance." Daniel nodded quickly, stepping away as another group of well-dressed applicants walked in confidently. He watched them, polished shoes, confident strides, laughter that carried certainty. They belonged. He didn't. But he stayed. Because leaving meant going back to the one-room house in Mushin, where his mother, Grace, coughed through sleepless nights and bills piled like silent threats. Leaving meant accepting that life had already decided his place, and Daniel wasn't ready to accept that. He adjusted his faded shirt and walked toward the receptionist desk after slipping in behind a group. The lady behind the desk didn't even look up. "Excuse me, Ma," he began. "No vacancies," she cut in sharply, still typing. "I just wanted to confirm." "I said no vacancies," she repeated, louder this time, finally glancing at him with irritation. Her eyes scanned him from head to toe, the cheap sandals, the slightly oversized trousers, the tired face. That look. Daniel knew it too well. It was the same look his secondary school classmates gave him when he couldn't pay for extra lessons. The same look the landlord gave his mother before threatening eviction. The same look that said, "You are not one of us." "I understand," Daniel murmured, turning away slowly. But as he walked toward the exit, he overheard something that made him stop. "Make sure only shortlisted candidates enter the boardroom," a man in a crisp suit said to another staff member. "We don't want unnecessary people wasting time." Unnecessary people. Daniel's grip tightened on his file again. Flashbacks flooded his mind. Late nights studying under a flickering kerosene lamp, solving equations while mosquitoes hummed in his ears, his mother whispering, "You will not remain here forever." The sacrifices, the hunger, the determination. He had graduated top of his class. Top. Yet here he was, treated like nothing. But he didn't leave. Instead, he sat quietly in a corner of the reception, pretending to read his file while watching everything. Listening. Hours passed. People came and went. Some walked out smiling, others looked defeated. Daniel noticed how the staff spoke, how decisions were made, who held power and who didn't. He was learning. Because even when they ignored the poor boy, he was paying attention. As the sun began to set, The office started to empty. The receptionist packed her bag without a second glance at him. "You're still here?" she asked casually. "Yes, Ma," Daniel replied. She shook her head, almost amused. "You people don't know when to give up." But Daniel simply smiled faintly, because giving up was a luxury he couldn't afford. That night, he returned home exhausted. His mother looked up from her bed, her weak smile lighting up the dim room. "How did it go?" she asked softly. Daniel hesitated, then forced a smile. "They said I should come back." Her eyes brightened with hope, and that was enough for him. But as he lay awake that night staring at the cracked ceiling, something inside him shifted. The humiliation, the rejection, the way they had ignored him, it burned deep. And in that burning, a quiet resolve was born. If they wouldn't open the door for the poor boy they ignored, then one day he would walk in through a door they couldn't close. And when that day came, would they recognize him? Or would the boy they ignored become someone they could no longer ignore? Daniel didn't return to the office the next day. Not because he gave up, but because something inside him had changed. He woke up before dawn, staring at the cracked ceiling, replaying every moment from the previous day. The way they had ignored him. The way they had spoken about unnecessary people. The way his presence meant nothing in a building he had dreamed about for years. But beneath the pain, something sharper was forming. Understanding. If they wouldn't give him a seat at the table, then he needed to understand how the table was built. That morning, instead of heading back to the office, Daniel walked to a small cyber cafe tucked between two noisy shops. The air smelled of dust and overheated computers. The owner barely looked at him as he paid for 1 hour. Daniel sat down, his fingers hovering over the keyboard for a moment. Then he began. He searched everything: companies, hiring patterns, business structures, interviews, leadership decisions. He read articles he barely understood at first, then read them again until they made sense. He watched videos, took notes, asked questions online under anonymous usernames, hour after hour, day after day. The money he used for transport, he now spent on internet time. At home, his mother, Grace, watched him quietly. She didn't fully understand what he was doing, but she saw the fire in his eyes. "Daniel," she said one evening, her voice weak but steady, "what you are chasing, don't let it break you." Daniel sat beside her, taking her frail hand gently. "It won't, Mom. It will change everything." But change didn't come easily. Weeks passed, then months. Daniel applied to countless jobs. Some didn't respond. Others rejected him without explanation. A few invited him for interviews, but once they saw him, once they heard where he came from, the outcome was always the same. Polite smiles, empty promises, rejection. Still, he didn't stop. During the day, he worked small jobs, carrying goods at the market, helping a mechanic, running errands, anything to survive. At night, he returned to learning, and slowly, something began to shift. One evening at the cyber cafe, Daniel stumbled on a free online certification program in business operations. It wasn't prestigious, it wasn't well known, but it was something. He enrolled immediately. The lessons were difficult at first. Words like logistics optimization and operational efficiency felt like a foreign language. But Daniel broke them down, piece by piece, refusing to be intimidated. Every completed lesson felt like a small victory. Every test he passed reminded him that he wasn't as unnecessary as they had made him feel. Months later, he earned his first certificate. He printed it out, holding the paper in his hands like it was gold. Grace smiled proudly when he showed her, her eyes glistening. "I told you," she whispered. "You will not remain here forever." But life tested him again. One night, Grace's condition worsened. Her coughing became violent, uncontrollable. Daniel rushed her to a small clinic, his heart pounding as doctors moved quickly around her. Bills followed, bills he couldn't afford. Daniel stood outside the clinic that night, staring at the dark sky, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on him. For a moment, just a moment, he felt like breaking. "What's the point?" a voice inside him whispered. "You're trying, but nothing is changing." But then another voice rose, quieter but stronger. "Remember who you are becoming." Daniel wiped his face, took a deep breath, and made a decision. He wouldn't just look for opportunities anymore. He would create one. The next morning, he returned to the cyber cafe with a new focus. Instead of searching for jobs, he started studying businesses, especially struggling ones. He noticed patterns, poor management, inefficient systems, waste, problems. And where there are problems, there are opportunities. Daniel began offering free help to small shop owners around his area, suggesting ways they could organize their stock better, track sales, reduce losses. At first, they didn't take him seriously, just like before. "You?" one shop owner laughed. "What do you know about business?" Daniel simply smiled. "Let me show you." Reluctantly, the man agreed. Within weeks, the shop's sales improved. Word began to spread. Slowly, people started listening. The same poor boy they once ignored was now someone they called for advice. Not because of his clothes, not because of where he came from, but because of what he knew. And for the first time, Daniel felt it. Respect. It wasn't loud, it wasn't grand, but it was real. One evening, as he closed up a small store he had helped reorganize, the owner handed him an envelope. "For your work," the man said. Daniel hesitated. "You don't have to." "Take it," the man insisted. "You've done more than enough." Daniel accepted it slowly, his heart beating fast. It was the first time someone had paid him for his mind. Not his labor, not his struggle, his value. As he walked home that night, something felt different. The streets looked the same. The noise, the chaos, the struggles, they hadn't changed. But he had. Because now, the poor boy they ignored was no longer waiting to be chosen. He was becoming someone impossible to ignore, and somewhere far from Mushin, in that same big office where he had once been dismissed. A decision was about to be made. A decision that would unknowingly bring them face to face with the very person they once called unnecessary. Don't forget to subscribe, like and comment where you are watching from. It gives me the strength and encouragement to keep writing beautiful stories. The email came on a Tuesday morning. Daniel almost ignored it. He was sitting inside the same small cyber cafe, helping the owner fix a simple inventory issue, when the notification popped up on the screen. The subject line alone made his heart skip. "Invitation for operational consultant interview." For a moment, he just stared. Then he clicked. As he read through the message, his fingers slowly tightened around the mouse. The company name sat boldly at the top. The same company, the same building, the same place where the poor boy they ignored had once been turned away without a second thought. But this time, it was different. They weren't calling him to submit a CV. They were inviting him. Daniel leaned back in his chair, a strange mix of emotions rising in his chest. Shock, validation, suspicion. Why now? He reread the email carefully. When it mentioned a recommendation from a small business owner he had helped months ago, apparently that man had connections, quiet ones, powerful ones. Daniel exhaled slowly. So this is how doors open, he thought. Not always by knocking, but by becoming someone worth inviting. Are you okay? The cafe owner asked, noticing his silence. Daniel nodded faintly. I think something just changed. The days leading up to the interview were different from anything Daniel had experienced before. There was no desperation this time, no begging, no standing outside hoping to be seen. Instead, there was preparation. Sharp, focused, deliberate. He borrowed a clean shirt, polished his shoes until they reflected light, reviewed everything he had learned, business structures, operational flaws, real-life case examples. But more importantly, he remembered. He remembered how they had treated him, not with anger, but with clarity. Because this time, he wasn't going there to ask for a chance. He was going there because he had earned one. The morning of the interview, Daniel stood in front of the same building again. But everything felt different. The guards who once ignored him now opened the gate without hesitation. "Good morning, sir," one of them said. "Sir." Daniel paused for half a second, then nodded and walked in. Inside, the same air-conditioned space greeted him, but this time it didn't feel intimidating. It felt familiar. The receptionist glanced up. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Something flickered in her expression. Recognition? Maybe. But she said nothing. "Your name?" she asked. "Daniel." She checked her list, then quickly straightened. "Yes, sir. You're expected. Please proceed to the 3rd floor. No dismissal, no irritation, just access." As Daniel stepped into the elevator, his reflection stared back at him. Same face, same person, but not the same boy. The doors opened to a quiet, polished hallway. A staff member guided him into a boardroom where 3 executives sat, reviewing documents. "Good morning," one of them said, gesturing for him to sit. Daniel nodded calmly. "Good morning." The interview began. At first it was standard. Questions about his background, his experience, his qualifications. But Daniel noticed something quickly. They weren't expecting much. Not from him. One of the executives leaned back, glancing briefly at his file. "You don't have conventional corporate experience. Why should we consider you?" Daniel held his gaze. "Because I understand problems most people overlook," he replied quietly. A slight pause. Interest. Another executive leaned forward. "Give us an example." Daniel didn't rush. He spoke about the small businesses he had worked with, the inefficiencies he identified, the simple but effective solutions he implemented, the measurable improvements. No exaggeration. Just truth. As he spoke, the atmosphere in the room began to shift. The same people who might have dismissed him before were now listening, carefully. One of them slid a document across the table. "This is a real operational issue we're currently facing. Take a look and tell us what you would do." Daniel scanned the paper. Within seconds, he saw it. Not just the problem, but the pattern behind it. He looked up. "You don't have a staffing issue," he said calmly. "You have a coordination problem. Your departments are working, but not communicating effectively." The executives exchanged quick glances. Daniel continued, his voice steady. "You're losing time, not manpower, and time is costing you more than you realize." Silence filled the room. But this silence was different. It wasn't dismissal. It was attention. For the next 20 minutes, Daniel broke everything down, step by step, clear, practical, realistic. No complicated theories, just solutions that worked. When he finished, no one spoke immediately. Then one of the executives leaned back slowly. "Interesting," he murmured. Another nodded. "Very interesting." The first executive closed the file in front of him and looked directly at Daniel. "We'll get back to you." Daniel stood up, nodding respectfully. "Thank you for your time." As he turned to leave, his eyes briefly scanned the room. The chairs, the table, the glass walls. This was the same world that once rejected him, but now it was considering him. As he stepped out of the building, the sun hit his face, warm and bright. He didn't smile. Not yet. Because he understood something important. Getting in the door was one thing, but what came next would change everything. And somewhere inside that building, as the executives sat in silence reviewing what they had just witnessed, one question lingered in all their minds. Had they just almost overlooked someone they should never have ignored? The announcement came without warning. No rumors, no whispers, just a single email that changed everything. Effective immediately, Mr. Daniel Wright has been appointed as the new head of operations. The office fell into a strange silence as the message spread from screen to screen. Confusion, shock, disbelief. "Who?" one staff member whispered. "Daniel. Right?" Another repeated slowly, as if the name itself didn't make sense. But in the boardroom upstairs, the decision had already been made. After his interview, Daniel hadn't just been reviewed, he had been tested. Quietly, thoroughly. The executives had run his ideas through real scenarios, compared his solutions with those of seasoned professionals, and the result was undeniable. He wasn't just good, he was necessary. So instead of offering him a small role, they made a bold move, the kind of move that would shake the entire structure. Just Daniel stood outside the same building once again. But this time, everything was different in a way that words could barely capture. The glass doors opened before he even reached them. "Good morning, sir," the guards greeted, almost in unison. Daniel nodded calmly, his expression unreadable, but inside him, memories were rising. Every step he took inside that building echoed with the past. The laughter, the dismissal, the word unnecessary. Now those same floors carried his footsteps with a different weight. Authority. As he entered, conversations died down almost instantly. Eyes followed him, some curious, some uncertain, some already filled with quiet fear. The receptionist looked up. This time, there was no hesitation, no judgment, just a stiff, respectful posture. "Good morning, sir." Daniel paused for a brief second, then gave a small nod and walked past. He didn't say anything, because he didn't need to. Power didn't need to announce itself. It was felt. The boardroom door opened, and all the executives stood up as he entered. "Good morning, Daniel," one of them said, offering a handshake. Daniel accepted it firmly. "Good morning." No trembling hands, no nervous voice, just calm control. They gestured for him to sit, but Daniel remained standing for a moment, his eyes moving slowly across the room. The same chairs, the same space where he had once sat as a candidate, being questioned, measured, almost dismissed. Now the dynamic had shifted completely. "Before we begin," one executive said carefully, "we want to officially welcome you, and we believe you are the right person to lead the changes this company needs." Daniel nodded once. "Thank you." Then he finally sat down. The meeting began, But something about it felt different. This time, Daniel wasn't answering questions. He was asking them. Sharp, direct, intentional. Why has this issue been allowed to continue for this long? Silence. Who is responsible for this breakdown in communication? Uncomfortable glances. Do you want solutions? Or do you want to maintain appearances? No one answered immediately. Because the truth was sitting right in front of them. The poor boy they ignored had become the one holding them accountable. Hours later, as Daniel walked through the departments, the atmosphere shifted with every step he took. People sat straighter, voices lowered. Work became intentional. And then he saw him, one of the guards from that day, the same one who had told him to move aside. The man froze the moment their eyes met. Recognition hit instantly, his face drained of color. "Sir," he muttered, unsure of what to say. Daniel stopped in front of him. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The past hung heavy between them. Then Daniel finally said calmly, "Good afternoon." The guard blinked, clearly caught off guard. Good afternoon, sir." Daniel held his gaze for a moment longer, then walked away. No insult, no revenge, just acknowledgement, because he didn't need to prove anything anymore. As the day went on, Daniel continued observing, questioning, restructuring. But deep down, something else was happening. Closure, not from revenge, but from becoming. That evening, he sat alone in his new office. The city stretched out beyond the glass window, alive and restless. He leaned back in his chair slowly, the same type of chair he once looked at from the outside, wondering what it would feel like to sit there. Now he knew, but it wasn't the chair that mattered. It was the journey. His phone buzzed, a message from his mother. "I'm proud of you." Daniel smiled softly, his eyes lingering on the words, all the struggles, all the rejection, all the moments he was ignored. They led here. But as he looked out at the city lights, one thought settled quietly in his mind. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning, because the poor boy they ignored didn't just become their boss. He became someone they could never ignore again. And this time, he was the one opening doors. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment where you are watching from. It gives me the strength and encouragement to keep writing beautiful stories.